and get this show on the road. Welcome everybody to another episode of Designhounds Talks. I'm getting really excited about these because we always try doing these, and then it was kind of like a thing of, what do you want to talk about? And then you run out, you don't have the time. I don't have the bandwidth, as we all don't. And suddenly lately, it's really great to have really great guests on the show and talk shop, talk design, talk business, talk creativity. So it's really nice. And at this moment, we're not doing any of these sponsored, although Concretus behind you is starting to look like they might be a sponsor for this thing. We are sending them
walk
this.
around. I'll walk around and give you some other ideas.
I know, exactly. Yeah, we have roll, we have everything. So, hey, everybody, it's good to see you guys. And again, this is our Designhounds Talks, and Designhounds Talks is exclusive to the Designhounds Influencer Network and our private group on Facebook. So these are conversations that we host and produce so that you guys can hopefully get some benefit, learn something new, and grow your business and or yourselves, because some of it is about personal growth as well. Do you guys hear this noise? Because now my tile installer is doing loud noise.
I don't hear anything.
Hope that didn't translate into this room. But, and of course, we have Cheryl Kees Clendenon here, who does not really need an introduction anymore, of In Detail Interiors in Pensacola, which I did not know was Central Time until I've only known you, what, like 14 years, and had
it's a big
no
secret.
idea.
It is a big secret to most of Florida.
Florida had another time zone. I did not know this. So that's like my biggest learning for coming out of all of this is just that.
Hopefully by the end of the meeting here, there'll be other tidbits also.
I think so. And it was so funny because, as I was kind of cruising Instagram to find memes with which to annoy my children, which is my primary objective in life, I came across something that you said. I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but it's the title of our show, The Client is Not the Enemy. So that just made me stop in mid-scroll, and I'm like, hold on a minute, we got to talk about that. But before we do, I want you to talk about yourself and tell us a little bit more about not just what you do as a designer and a business coach and influencer, but tell us about your life too, and also how you got to be in this position in the first place.
Okay. For those who don't know me, I run a full service design firm with 8 people total. We just hired another person that's starting in a few weeks. We have a retail boutique, a retail shop. I have the annual coaching program that we do, and then sometimes we'll do other things and here and there and that sort of thing to support that. I write for Home Accents Today. I've had a retailer to retailer column for 4 years. So that's pretty fun, although, 12 columns a year starts to get a little, I'm starting to wonder if I'm running out of things to say, about all this. And it's not just retailers, it's a lot of it. They don't care if I write about design or whatever. It's just the name of the column was that forever. So I write a lot about different things. The last issue was really a good one. I've gotten a lot of good things. People will write me back. It's really kind of cool. My 15 minutes of fame there with people that writing me back about the column if it affects them and stuff. And sometimes it's one lady said that I forget. I mean, it might have been Howard Elliott, the gal there, but said that her sales manager has several times used the column in his sales meetings. And then she reminds him, it's like, don't forget to give Cheryl credit for all that you just said. And it was kind of a funny thing. So I kind of was like going, wow, it was actually the president of the company, not the sales manager, but it was in a sales meeting. So that's kind of cool. So that keeps me doing it. Right. And then I seasonally write for the coaching column of Furniture, Lighting and Decor too. I'm doing it right now. I have one more column to come out with them for this. And then a podcast, the Damn Good Designer podcast. So yeah, I've drank the Kool-Aid and trying to figure out when I can do other things. I live on the beach in Pensacola, so that's kind of nice. So it really, you've seen pictures and stuff, Veronika, and so it's really a beautiful area. So I think that that helps, in terms of the time thing, because I'm having a staycation pretty much all the time and on the weekends, and we go boating and do things like that. And of course, I find a little time to work like everybody here, just to do that
balance.
Yeah,
well, you will answer a Facebook message at 3 o'clock in the morning without even any hesitation. I don't think you sleep.
Well, I don't,
Probably with humor.
I'm working on that though. That is a goal. I'm working on that so that I can get up earlier because I have a new puppy. And the puppy, which is a border collie, is like pretty much we're thinking the spawn of Satan. But we love her and she is adorable. But she's getting up early in the morning. So to give my husband a break, sometimes I'm trying to get more sleep. Last night I went to bed at 11 o'clock, which is really early for me. I just want, you know, my Aura ring was so proud of me. I mean, it was like sending me like confetti, and I'm expecting like candy or chocolate or something at my door from Aura. You know,
that's why I don't do my my Fitbit anymore, because it keeps reprimanding me over my bad sleep habits. I'm just leaving me alone. I just take it off, and now I sleep much better because I don't have the constant criticism on my wrist. I think there's a logic here that's counter to what they're really trying.
Well, I made the mistake though of getting my mother one, so now I'm friends with her. So she will then, you know, or like whatever, she's in my circle or something like that, and so she will say to me, "Oh, I see you didn't have your Aura ring on yesterday. I see the activity levels or something." So,
that's too close for comfort. I'm sorry, but you know, I happen to know from you know, knowing you for so long that interior design wasn't always your first baby. What's your background?
Okay, so my very first job ever was selling my own neighborhood newspaper for a year in fifth grade. It was until I moved. It was a big hit. So I think I got the writing bug, you know, early. And I hate to say it because I'm really dating myself, but my teacher at school, you know, ran it off on those purple things, you know, the purple mimeograph, whatever, you know, stuff that, do you guys remember that? Does anybody here remember that? You know, the purple things?
The copy machine, but
the copy. So okay, I'm, you know, dating myself a little bit. So that was my first job. And then I started and I've been working since I was 15 years old, when I lied about my age to get a bag girl job. And then I worked in waitressing and things like that. I've done a lot of things there, but I started my real career after college in advertising at Needham Harper Worldwide. I think these are some of the things that you and I have had in common, you know, with all of that, right? And then you did radio, I think, too, because I was in radio for a very you know, a pretty good chunk of time before we got respectfully relocated to Pensacola, meaning my husband at the time was military doctor, and so we had to move here. And it was very sad leaving San Diego and my job there, because I had moved up the ladder from sales and marketing. I was the youngest person ever promoted at Gannett into a management role. And so I was pretty excited about that. And I really enjoyed that. And then I had like little side jobs too. I like started the whole, like in my world, you know, this like added value thing, because I had a side hustle doing a secret shopper visits. And I started it out just to sell to my radio clients, you know, like car dealers and people like that, you know, just and then smaller retail stores. One of them was a kitchen and bath store, Kitchens by DeLuca, which I don't know if it's still in San Diego or in La Mesa rather, or not. But did a secret shopper thing for them, and then gave them a report and all this. And I kind of packaged it together with my, you know, gave them that added bonus if they bought advertising from me and that sort of thing, and for the good clients. So that was kind of fun. And then it kind of spun off into doing a little bit more for other people too. It never was going to make me rich, but it was a lot of fun, you know. I mean,
you know, our Needham connection, because that was obviously, as we both know, our connecting tissue, because I was in Munich on the German side of DDB Needham, working on the McDonald's account, and that kind of leads me a little bit. Oddly enough, I've just been writing the other day about some customer service topics. That's kind of keeps popping back into my mind as we think about the next decade or so in business development, and where we've really moved away from customer service. Well, I grew up, anybody that knows me, I was 11 years old when my parents were the first franchisees for McDonald's in Europe. And I grew up, I did my homework in the training room where those videos were going all day long. I am nothing if not completely customer service oriented. My answer to anything any customer has ever asked of me, whether it was in the form of a complaint or kudos, was absolutely, sure, let's do it. And I was always taught to serve it with a smile. So when I came across Instagram and you know, this line that the client is not the enemy, that's what immediately came back to me. And thinking sometimes it's annoying and often it's very stressful and it's painful. And, you know, there's a part of me as a young designer before I ended that side of my world that really, really struggled with, because I did not know how to properly set expectations and manage expectations. And that is exactly why I asked you to come and talk to me today, is to help think through how I'd like to really drill down, number one, what some of your thinking is around that, but also understanding what some of the tools are that people can take away to stay sane as they try to navigate that, and how not to make it personal to where your defense mechanism isn't one of thinking that the client is just evil. And I know you have a lot to say on that, but kind of where did that come from? This, the client is not the enemy. You were worried that that's negative. I actually don't think that it's negative. What do you, what's your thinking?
I don't, Veronica, I think that the problem is that it's that people aren't always aware of their own complicity and what they do. You know, I call it, you know, when I'm coaching and it with my team and everything, is facing the man in the mirror. And I have to do that a lot. I've got a strong personality, you know, so I have to say, was I just an asshole then? Oh my God, you know, and go back and apologize to somebody or whatever. And I'm quick to do that because I'm very self-aware of being that way, you know. And I think in that particular meme, I think I said something at the end. I don't remember exactly what it said, but it was something at the end, you know, that most people don't, you know, they're not intending to be Daffy Dick, you know, they just, you know, don't know, you know, they don't know, they really don't understand, you know, how we work and how to work with a designer. And I think a lot of it is just a lack of education and you know, on how it works, you know, and I'm not sure that we are always doing it. It's a fractured industry, right? It's a fractured industry, meaning there's no one charges the exact same way. No one does. And I'm not advocating for that either, because I'm all for, you know,
all different,
you know, having people doing what they need to do. So I'm not an advocate for that, but I'm just saying the reality though, is that you need to manage that, because not everybody does charge the same. Not everybody works the same. Not every region is the same. And I coach designers all over the place, you know, from lots on the East Coast and the West Coast, but then, you know, people in the heartland, you know, also, and it's very different with each of these people, how they are, what their community is like as well. But there's certain commonalities that come up. And I think that if we operate, and especially if you go down the Facebook rabbit hole and you really, you know, get enabled, okay, because I think it's an enabling thing when people are trying to lift you up. But sometimes it's lifting people when something's bad. You know, this guy's such a jerk. He's a red flag. He's this, he's that, all this stuff. Well, he may be, because there are jerks, right? There are assholes, right? I mean, they're just, that is like, that's a reality, but it doesn't mean that they're necessarily a red flag. It just means that you know, there's something that is not penetrating. Either it's not the right client for you, or for anyone, or there is something about the communication that is falling short. And I personally think it's a lot of it because clients just don't really understand. Because I work with primarily busy professionals and kind of strong personalities. You know, the strong attracts the strong, right? So there's times where, you know, you have to lay down the law and say, you know, this is what's going on, or whatever, in a nice way, in a good way. But we try to avoid all of that by being super on our game beforehand, you know, and that is really, I guess, the biggest deal. But, you know, the thing is, we see this, you know, the clients don't want to pay for storage. They don't want to pay for time to manage all the moving parts. They want to be able to steer their own design by shopping alongside you, you know, all this stuff. And I say to people, if the client really, truly wants all these things, you know, and they want to do all that, then let them.
Yeah. And this is where you said the word red flag is banned in your group.
Yes.
And I think that makes a lot of sense to me, because to me, I'm actually a big believer in the power of words and how it impacts our brain. So that gets a little neurological, but when we say pain, our brain actually knows what that means and will respond with pain. And when we say something negative, it creates negative, you know, programming in our own brain. So it's much harder to get out of that negative thought process just by using the word. So when I read that, I said, I actually completely agree with it. You know, it's too easy to just say, that's a red flag, run away. Don't deal with that client. You know, the clients, they're your bread and butter. So to your point, and one of the things I'd like to accomplish here is twofold. One of the things is twofold. Yeah, leave it with me to burn out by Tuesday in a work week. But okay, so two things I really want to get at in this conversation. One is the tactical elements that you use to set and manage expectations in terms of some of the tools you recommend to do that, and the elements you guys put in place in terms of how you communicate with a client. And the second one is the emotional side. How do you protect yourself from letting that ever really get under your skin? Now, I know that you are, as you said, very, very strong, very dynamic, but you're also a very positive person in terms of how you communicate, right? You're also a yes person. And that is, I think some of that is already the secret sauce just to begin with. You don't go into a conversation with a self-protective armor. You're going in there kind of more in a curious way. But before we talk about that, help us think through what some of your processes are that you guys have in place that helps set the right mode from the start.
Well, I think communication is the number one, part of that. And I think there's another little meme I have that I have really, it's mostly internal. It might be, I might have talked about it in my hiring section at the design paradigm, but it's really, it's that so much communication is circumstantial. The circumstances define how effective the reception can be judged. So if you change the circumstances, you can often change the outcome. And this is something that, this is from me, this is not like something I picked up somewhere else. It's just, it's 24 years of being a boss, for one thing, or 22 of my 24 years, I've had a team of some sort. And I realized that, and I'm not the best communicator all the time internally because I've got so many things pinging all over the place, but I set the framework so that people know that. When I interview them, I tell them that. I tell them that sometimes you're going to have to go, what do you mean by the thing on the thing over by the thing? You're going to have to say that to me. And I'm okay with that because at that moment, I'm trying to remember something and get it off to you. But what I'm talking about with that, and this is goes internal as well as with clients, but just being concise on your emails, not giving multiple emails. Again, I work with these busy professionals, right? And so there's low tolerance for a lot of back and forth. Like ask all the things you need to ask in one email before you send it, kind of thing. We talk about no hallway meetings, or assumed understanding. And I think the assumed understanding is a big one.
It's a big one. And let me kind of, because you're saying a lot. So I want to kind of drill down into that a little bit. I think the word assume, huge problem. And that just comes with being seasoned at any job. We all make assumptions that the other person ought to know this by now. And whether it's us with design hounds or you with interior designers, both the designers that you're coaching and or the clients that you're working with, I think we all have to always remind ourselves that we probably have to go back to square one as we engage with a client, right? So that assumption can't assume anything, as they say, right?
You really can't. And I think that sometimes people are worried about dumbing things down and you're going to be insulting to people. I think there's ways to write things that do that. But on top of that, the rest of that list, just let me finish that too, because some of this is, I think, really obvious, but yet sometimes these things, like I use these kinds of things to communicate with my team in the sense of, like, if it's a he said, she said thing, get it in writing. Like that is a common Cheryl thing, like I say that, but it helps them recenter, sometimes without a bunch of words, it's giving somebody like that ability to go, oh, that's right. If it's a he said, she said, it has to be in that. So I think that, verbal directives are not good, or verbal, going back and forth with a client. If we talk to a client on the phone, we send an email and we recap it. Bullet points are key. Bullet points are key for my clientele. don't 16 paragraphs ain't gonna cut it. I'm not gonna read anything like that internally. And so I don't even read it from clients, I'll send it to somebody else because I don't have time for that. So, but if a client bullet points something, then I'm gonna read it. And then incomplete sentences where, people aren't using a subject and a verb. And I'm talking about with clients, this is a simple thing, y'all, but sometimes it makes a difference where you're not saying it and this and that and things like that, because these are people that don't necessarily understand our world. So when you're bringing them on board and you are giving them, say, a Friday recap, which is one of the things we do religiously, is a Friday recap. So and that's also a recap for me too, because Liz does these and I'm able to, the team reads them also to kind of, keep up to speed on everything. But when that happens, it's really easy to default to the language that we all know if we're doing remodels, new builds, and if they're that kind of designer, and utilizing words that aren't always clear enough. In saying, the tile or the grout in the tile or the transition, like people talk about transition in a shower. Okay. You need to explain that to a client. I mean, they're not going to understand, why the countertop guy is worried about the transition here, but it's because we're doing a solid curb. Now that, those kinds of things, sometimes with incomplete sentences without, and what I mean by that is just regurgitating it in a more concrete way. I'm not really sure what the technical thing is to do that. And then I think also lazy ownership. I think a lot of people have lazy ownership with things that it's not my job, it's not my, not my, job to do that. And I do understand that a lot of times it is not your monkeys or your circus, but those things have to be established up front. And that's really, getting back to your question is I'm quite the little farmer here in Northwest Florida. I'm constantly, planting seeds, and that's exactly what I call it is seed planting to everyone that we are dropping these little nuggets all along from way before they even call us. But then the discovery call, then the initial consultation, all of that, so that we don't have anybody ask us about shopping or give us shopping. I never get that, ever, never.
About shopping,
shopping pricing, sorry. Shopping pricing, because it's just not something we had that off at the pass way before we get to that section, and we have ways of ensuring that they're not going to do it, because I institute a minimum expenditure and they have to do that. And it's not a minimum per like overall, like some people think it is. It is a minimum per the project. We price the client and we price the project. We do not have a set price for anything because every project is different. And along with that, Veronika, when you're talking about takeaways, really is having a super strong scope of work, and the scope of work, and it's never done. I mean, good Lord. Yesterday, Liz and I sent out a new one to this client who's in Ohio, but buying a house here. And for various reasons, I'm looking at it and going, you know what? I think we can be more clear about that, And it's just, it's not because of the situation. It's not ever done. It's an evolving thing. And our scope of work is very in depth. It's visual. It's a beautiful piece. It is a game changer, according to the people that I've coached for the last 8 years. It is a major game changer, and it really does help people, clients, understand more about the process, even if they go back later and look at it. Now that gets substituted. I mean, gets followed up with a contract. A big long, contract, which also has to be really, tight as well.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Does that contract, if your scope of work gets updated, does the contract get updated too?
No, actually, the scope of in the contract, the scope of work is Exhibit A.
Is an addendum. Okay.
It's an Exhibit A, and so everything in there, and it's really, it's not a like thou shall not do this, thou shall not do that. It is really all about being educating and letting people know. And also, I tell clients, like, all of our deliverables are on there. And it is a list that you can hold me accountable to everything that's on that list, because that's what we're going to be doing for you. Now, what I'm not saying, but is implied is, and if it ain't on there, it's on the next page where it says additional scope of work. So we outline if this happens, then people add scope of work all the time. I think it's great. It doesn't, It doesn't bother me in the least little bit. I just look at it like more money comes in because it's so well outlined that they know exactly what's going to happen.
That this is going to be extra.
Yeah. So you know what I'm doing here? And there's a great book on this, if anybody wants to pick it up. And I don't remember the exact title, but it's about friction. It's called Friction. And I don't think there's any other words to it, but it probably has a subtitle. But you're wanting to avoid friction points in your relationship. And I'm sure this is part of what McDonald's would have talked about, you know, as well, without maybe identifying it that way, because it's such a well-run organization, you know, because we did their advertising in San Diego too, back in the day. So for those franchises, but it's about reducing that friction, and there's ways to reduce friction all the time. And I think a lot of times what I personally think, and probably this is going to be controversial, is that a lot of the newest, latest, greatest programs and automations and things and all that has actually done a disservice to the industry. You know, I really do. I think that if you let the programs run your business rather than hiring help and doing it in that way, I think that you can get into this path of having click here to approve this, click here. Like, I am never, ever, 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 ever going to do that sort of line item approvals for clients, because I don't think it's client centric, and it's certainly not for my best interest to do something like that. So I think that what I'm trying to do is make it easy for people to purchase. I'm making it easy for people to meet with us, you know, but that doesn't mean I'm going to meet on a Saturday, because I'm not, you know.
That was actually going to be my question. So if you're setting up your scope of work, and I want to hear in a minute a little bit more about how when you say it's also visual, I'd love to know how that's kind of structured. But you're setting your expectations through the scope of work and through your contract. So now it's about managing those. How available are you to those clients? What is your secret sauce in terms of avoiding your own burnout? Are you available via text? How do you deal with people?
You know, I mean, again, not a popular thing, and I don't have small kids, so I will say that, you know, I don't have small kids anymore. So I can understand people protecting their time. I do put my phone down and turn it off all the time, but I don't care if a busy professional wants to text me. You know, it's not an issue. I had a client over the weekend that emailed us and said, the subject line was, "Do not read this until Monday." But he runs a company also, and it's a great client, a great fee, a great new build. You know, all the things are great. He's like bucking for client of the year. And he just said that. And then he had gone through, because it's the weekend for him and he can think about his personal home. Okay. So not everybody, just as you cannot always do things during the week for personal, sometimes clients can't either. And yes, people will say the standard Facebook line is, well, they take off for the doctor and they take off for this or that or whatever. Okay, you know, that may be true, but I think that, and I'm not saying that people should meet with people on the weekends. I mean, I would if it was a really great job. I mean, if there was like some like really awesome thing and it was a huge budget and all that, I can guarantee I'm going to meet with them on the weekend if I need to. But generally speaking, that doesn't come up, because I think we get clients that are like this guy. I mean, that just happened this weekend, literally. And we get clients that are very respectful of that. And I don't have clients that text me at 10 o'clock at night. I don't. So when one of my designers I'm coaching says, well, I've got this client doing, okay, and I don't say, oh, you poor thing. That's so mean of that guy to do that. Bad client. I'm not going to say that. I'm really not. I'm a little bit in the tough love category, or the coach that made you do the stadiums, you know, that's where I would consider myself. And I'm going to look back and go, so let's talk about that discovery call. Let's talk about that initial consult. Let's talk about the expectations that you have set, that this client is now violating this, because somewhere along the line, you missed some cues and this probably wasn't a good client for you. Or you need to explain to them that you're not going to do that. If it bothers you, I just don't answer. That's the beautiful thing about a cell phone, right? Is that I just don't answer. And I have said this many times to people, and some people say, well, it just really bothers me. I'm like, okay, well, that's on you then, because it really bothers.
Then set that's your boundary right there. Then set that and stick to it, right?
Yeah, and we say all that.
I do agree with you on some of the automation around some of these things, the disconnect. that happens there, because, you know, at the end of the day, as they always say, people buy from people, and they don't buy from companies, and we're all humans. So to your point, I think a lot of it comes down to education. A lot of it comes down to communication, and then getting in the way, I would probably say, especially around communication, text versus email. To me, as a client of anything, if I'm sending an email and I know that I'm not going to hear back from that entity until Monday or Tuesday, that just gives me a chance to fester. So now I'm going to be a whole lot snippier by the time Monday, Tuesday rolls around. And I remember as a designer, I used to prefer to grab the bull by the horns because I didn't want to lose any sleep all weekend.
Right.
So I just
that's the way I am too. That's the way I am.
Makes you feel better too, doesn't it?
Yeah. For me, though, too, is I don't want to face Monday with 79,000 emails, because that's exactly what happened. So if I see an email over the weekend, and in this case, it was about Toto toilets, I didn't need to answer that until Monday. And I knew, and really, honestly, I'm not going to answer at all. Somebody on my team will. So that one was not an issue that I had to deal with. But the overall, if I have a moment on the weekends that I'm not doing anything and I want to if I'm out on the boat, no, I'm not responding to emails. But if I want to look at it on the weekend, it doesn't bother me at all. And if there was something was on fire, I would want them to text me about it. I just don't have this. I respect those who don't like that and don't want to do that. I definitely love the email trail, because otherwise I have to screenshot it and, you know, send it to our project management board. It takes me a couple of seconds. So we don't encourage it, but it's also with some clients, I just don't make a deal about it, I guess, is what I say. I'm not, you know, we ask them to put everything in an email, and we also ask them to copy, you know, whoever's on their project, because Cheryl only sees about 50% of her email.
That's actually one of the questions that happens with text, right? Especially when you have a team. So yeah. 2 questions coming out of that. Number one, is it email that you prefer, to have an email thread go back and forth in terms of dialogue, or do you communicate with Google Docs or any other way for your clients to work with you?
No, Google Docs have always kind of vexed me. I don't, because we pay for it and everything with our Google email deal. So I don't know why we don't use it more, but we actually, on ClickUp, you can email from a task. So if the task is about bid reviews, and we're talking about bidding, you know, bids from subs or whatever, then we start a subtask and we email from that task, and then the whole thread is captured. And that is very helpful.
And what is the software you use for that?
ClickUp.
ClickUp.
Yeah. And I started out with Trello on your advice 1,000 years ago.
I remember that.
Yeah. Do you? And that was because of you, because you had talked about it. And then we went from Trello to ClickUp when Trello got a little wonky, and it's great for a lot of people, but there's probably other programs that do it. It's so robust. Sometimes it overwhelms people, but we try to emanate tasks, you know, that are going to be important ones that are going to be threaded on there, because it's just all right there on that particular task, which brings me to one of the other thoughts here, is that you know, we have a very decisive workflow, and that was what the last article was about in Furniture, Lighting, and Decor, if anybody wants to read it, because that just is out right now, the June article, because it is about the importance of the workflow, because Liz is now remote in New Hampshire. So this is my right hand, my work wife, right? And so we're having to really be, I mean, it is no longer even like we can deviate here from the norm at all. It is very regimented, because we have to follow that workflow, because we have a key person that is not physically in the office to kind of pick up on things. So for us, the workflow is really important. But the thing about it for the client too is it's not a client facing thing, it's internal. But we also, in that scope of work, we delineate how many meetings we're going to have based on that project. And it doesn't mean that we can't have another one if we need to, or a quick thing where they come in, but it helps me protect my energy stores. And when people talk about time all the time, it really, it's not about the time, it's about your energy. It really is. It's not about managing your time, it's about managing your energy, at least for me. And I can't do certain things in the same day, because I'm expending a lot of energy. I can't have 3 designers that I meet one-on-one in one day, because I won't be, that third one is going to get shortchanged because I'm not going to have as much energy. And to help protect that, we set up some meetings are Zoom, like a kickoff meeting is Zoom. And then in that meeting, it's very specific, and I can tell you what we do there to help with that in a second. But then the other meetings, are like, we have a schematic meeting, and then we have 3 creative meetings if it's a big enough job. Now, some jobs are all one and done in one meeting. I mean, schematic, elevations, if we're doing a kitchen, for example, a lot of that may be there, and then there's a follow-up meeting. But we delineate this in our scope of work, okay? And so we're very specific about, this is what we're going to do. And again, it doesn't mean that I'm not client-centric, because we absolutely are. And so if we need an additional meeting, we do. But I try to make some of them, like the kickoff meeting on Zoom, and then the bid review when we go over bids, because we handle a lot of that with contractors. So we do that on Zoom also, because we're sharing screens and things like that. It's just, it makes sense. But it's also, I don't have to be there for that.
Yeah. Do you record it?
Huh? Yes. Oh, absolutely. Zoom's recording, and their little thing is actually pretty good. It's not, sometimes it's kind of funny.
The transcript is the funniest thing. So sometimes you get a whole new.
It's not bad. It's not bad. And it's recorded, and the all the words, all the transcripts, are there. But that helps a lot. So in our scope of work, while we are super client-centric, I mean, absolutely 100% client-centric, I'm doing things to make sure that I get the right clients, first of all. So your discovery call, super important. Your initial consultation, super important. And I don't know if you remember this, Veronika. This is funny. I'd forgotten about this until just now, but do you remember at DXV, when you tapped me in to work on that very first DXV deal in 2014, we met in New Jersey, and it was a big meeting. I don't remember what the purpose of it was, but it was something in New Jersey we were going to tour everything, but we also had this big meeting. And I think you may have asked us to prepare something, but at that time I prepared my archetype. That's when I wrote the archetypes, the client archetypes that I still use today. Right. Still, all this time, 10 years now. And those client archetypes are, were really cool. I presented them there for whatever reasons that you had asked us to do something. I don't know, but I did it then. And those client archetypes really help us and I've been able to use those as teaching guides to my team to understand who is an ideal client for us and who is not. And then the things that you look for on a discovery call and an initial consultation to indicate that that it's a red flag client, but that it might not align with how we're doing business right now. And that kind of slides and changes a little bit. I mean,
is that something you would recommend to designers, to create their own set of archetypes and identify who they would be comfortable working with?
Yeah, I think so. And then what happens here is that it forces you to then think about the obvious, like how to sell to that person. So for me, I've got it all outlined. It's like, this is the person, this is what to look for, this is what they value typically, this is what this kind of person typically values. And then underneath that is going to be, what is their purchasing personality like? And then how to sell to them, like how to remove friction from their relationship, from your relationship with them, because removing friction from client A might not look the same as removing friction from client B, and that is something that I think is important and not taught. That's the marketing part of me that loves that. And exactly. Then we have fun names like, the social collaborator, the vagabond traveler, and the, whatever. I mean, the last one is I can't remember the name. I have to look it up, but it's the one that I wrote after DXV, and it was number 8. And that was one that I definitely do not want. The other 7 we could handle. But you have to deal differently with different kinds of people. And I think that's normal. And for some,
but I think we do it. What I love about the way your brain works is that it analyzes what these processes and has learned to analyze them over the years. Too many creatives, I think, intuitively react to a situation, and they will probably do the right thing under the hood in terms of how they deal with that specific client, how they sell to them. We'll feel it, and then we'll change our tack. But the problem is, if you have an analyzed version of what's going on in your head. And I wonder if coming out of this conversation, I'm not thinking the first set of expectations that needs to be set is of you and yourself, of how you work before you're even
Absolutely.
thinking about setting expectations for your client. I just made that up, but you know what I mean?
But that's very true. Very true, because you have to know what your tolerance levels are. And that makes, and here's the other thing, based on the season that you are in your career and right now, like this snapshot in time does not mean that it's going to be the snapshot in time later. So summertime, you know, for example, might be a little more crazy if you have young kids, you have kids at home. So your acceptance right now at certain times might be a little different than it might be later. So your tolerance levels may shift a little bit, you know, here and there, or if you have more help, then you don't, or whatever. All these things, I think people should look at it as a sort of a fluid, you know, opportunity to assess what they're comfortable with and what their values are and what is aligning with their values and who is aligning with their values, more so than the typical avatar thing that people, blah, blah, you know, that stuff that I don't really find a lot of value in. I just like to know that certain types of it, for me, it's a learning tool more than anything, because after this many years, I'm pretty instinctive on my meeting with people. I can read them pretty well. But again, that's when we're planting seeds also. You're planting seeds at discovery call. You're planting seeds at the initial consultation. So you're preparing, you're tilling the soil for when you give them the scope of work, and then you give, our contract is 8 pages long. Okay, so it is a scary contract, and we never have pushback on it. And what that tells me is that we are doing a good job of getting to that point without friction.
Well, you're taking their fear away, because I think a lot of anger comes from fear, right? They don't know if you're going to take advantage of them. They don't know if you're going to overcharge them, or if you're going to even do a good job, because the trust has to go both ways. And I think a very detailed guideline and document makes them be less apprehensive, and then therefore not be suspicious all the time behind everything that happens in their home, which is the heart of where they live. So I think that's really important. So there's the psyche of the client as well as your own. I know we're getting closer to our 45 minutes here, but wanted to kind of on these elements that you've listed, just kind of to recap some of the notes that I took, is to communicate in writing wherever possible. If you're verbally communicating, then send a memo afterwards with bullet points of what you heard, to make sure that we all heard the same thing, right? Be very concise. Recap phone calls. Your Friday recap is intriguing. What if the clients are not up for a weekly thing? Do you guys send them that in writing? How do you recap? How do you force them into that?
We send it in writing. It's an email, and we send it in writing. And sometimes we're just saying, hey, you know, hope you have a fabulous weekend. Everything is still on go from last week. And, you know, we're just touching base. Let us know if there's anything else, or we give them homework. I think giving clients homework sometimes is a really good thing to keep them busy. You know, kind of like I'm keeping my puppy busy with some, you know, things so that she doesn't destroy my house. It's the same thing. You know, you can keep people busy with various homework. And so we use that. We use it like as a next steps. Here's your homework. It's kind of, I wouldn't say templated, because that makes it sound like it's automated, but it's not. It's just how we do it. And it's also internal, because when I read those, and so I see those from Liz, and I see those, you know, my team sees them. So it also does double duty. I love a good 2-for-1. So it's, you know, also communicating with the team when we read this, because we may not know about some of the project management stuff. I mean, I don't pay attention to every little thing that's going on in every single job. So yeah, the Friday recaps are like, they're sacred. And then also, I'll tell you another thing that's sacred to us is the follow-up to the discovery call. When we have a discovery call, we have a paid initial consultation, but when we send that, that is, when we have that discovery call, there is a follow-up email that goes out every single time. And it's reiterating what we said in there that are key points. First of all, that we charge, and we're not going to be designing your living room on a napkin, okay? And, you know, something to that effect. It talks about our minimum spend, in what that means. And then it talks about, because repetition is our friend. And then it also talks about, you know, how we, you know, how that we're going to do a flat fee, and we're going to assess diagnose the patient when we're out there. We're going to talk about this. It is not a design meeting, because I don't ever want someone coming out there and them thinking that I'm going to run around and tell them that they need to have a red sofa over here and a blue chair over there or whatever. That's not happening. It is a diagnostic meeting. And we charge handsomely for this, especially in our area, and we have no problem getting it. So I think that, but what that shows you is a very strong, tilling the ground so that they understand exactly what's happening when we come out there. And those are the things that we do that help start that process of managing expectations. Because I don't want to go out and have somebody, expect me to do something that I'm not prepared to do. So we're religious about the Friday updates, and we're religious about about that week, that follow-up email.
Beautiful. So, and the last kind of thing, kind of going a little bit more, and you started talking about this already, because I wanted to kind of think about how do you keep yourself emotionally sane? Because you are, especially if you're a one-person shop, right? It's all on you. You don't have that staff. You don't have those buffer people. To me, I can't even begin to imagine what that feels like anymore. I did it and it was exhausting, and I stopped doing it because I didn't want to get up in the morning anymore. And this is where designers go, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to be a consultant, or I'm going to do something else, because I cannot be married to this client. No, don't blame you, because if it's just you fielding all those dialogues, I can't.
It's tough. You have to manage your capacity. It really is. It all goes back to the business part of it, Veronika. It really does. You have to, no matter you're a solo person, you have 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, whatever, you have to manage the capacity of your team. That's a very important part of a CEO's role, is to manage. And that also means yourself. So
that self-analysis, that really kind of is that something you give guidance on? When you coach, do you help?
Yeah. Actually, you see my necklace here, it says disrupt. That's my word. But for everybody who graduated last year from the program, I sent them all a word. And it was closely, and then a little blurb on what I thought about that. And they were all different, because they were all individual for these people that I wanted them to focus on, like something that they need to focus on. So yeah, and in that sense, I get to know the people in the program so that I understand, really what makes them tick and what makes their business tick, and their level of engagement that they need to, because if you have young children, I mean, it's tough, it really is tough.
Different story.
Yeah, it's a completely different story. And I started this business with 4-year-old and 6-year-old. So I get it. I mean, it's been a few years, but I get it, how that works. And I was a single mom at the time. So, managing your capacity is super important. I learned that with Gannett. Okay. We had access to fabulous speakers, fabulous training and all that, and managing capacity is one of the most important things, but you have to be methodical about it. One of the things we do is a goal setting exercise that is financial, but all part of that in there is really identifying the capacity. How many hours, percentage of your time are you going to be working on this? What's the percentage of time you're going to be working on that? And there's several, areas that you need to do. And I'm very methodical about that, because it's financial goals, which is important to me, profit's important to me, but also it helps people learn and understand where their time needs to be spent, because we're also pulled in a million different directions, and no different on your business. The big problem to that is, in the last few years, Veronika, these jobs, if you're doing a big remodel or new construction, they go on forever. And so you think it's going to be X amount of time. Now I can show somebody how to make money doing it, like making sure that you're covered even after a certain amount of time, because we set a time limit on it. And after that, we go to hourly, or there's some other arrangement made, whatever, no matter what happens. But that's a separate topic. But
it's exhausting. And you're in this business to some extent because you're creative, because you want to, create an amazing space. And if it takes, instead of 6 months, it takes 2 years, that's a marriage right there.
Oh, yeah.
And that is very tough to drive forward. And some of the things that we're preaching in some of our conferences right now is really the creative reset, because I feel like design, because of the focus on business, and because of the fact that when we had a lot of time during the pandemic, we focused so much on profitability and process. that sometimes we actually lose sight of our own creative process. And ultimately, that's why you started doing this in the first place, right? So you got to come back to that too.
And you have to allocate that time for that. Like that's part of the
make
capacity.
time for that.
You know,
Exactly. For your own personal inspiration, your own personal travel, your own
pondering.
planning.
I call it pondering time. You have to have pondering time, you know, to do that. But also, here's the other thing about that. You got to hire help. Okay, I'm telling you, and maybe you're gonna have to do. I hate this overwhelm thing. Like it's like the buzzword of the decade here or whatever. I hate the whole overwhelm thing. What I want to say is we're overcoming obstacles instead, because again, just like you said at the very beginning, I think that what you put into your brain is so important. And I'm not a woo-woo person. You know me well enough to know after 14, 15 years that I am totally not woo-woo, but I have found that this is what helps me. Is not stopping myself in the tracks and saying, whoa, dogs, you are not overwhelmed. Don't you dare say that, Cheryl. You are overcoming obstacles. You know,
it's positive.
Bracelets out. But you have to sort of talk to yourself that way.
You have to trick yourself. You are tricking your brain. You really are.
You have to, and you have to hire help. So I think that that's the single most important thing that designers don't do soon enough. They wait until they're completely crazed.
Right out.
Then it's frustration everywhere because the client or the new person is frustrated because the processes probably aren't outlined the way they should. There's probably no workflow the way it should be. There's all these things going on, and that person's
because
frustrated.
You're being reactive. You're
frustrated because you're paying this person. And they're not getting anything done. And you're like, well, they suck because this was a terrible idea, Cheryl, to hire people. And so you do have to invest in your business. And so you may have to suck it up until you get to a point where you have a few dollars extra. I did not make a lot of money my first 5 or 6 years. I really didn't. I made some money, but I had a very definitive goal. And that was to have a team. And I think it's important. And the attitude about it is probably the most important thing, but also good friends, good wine, and good books. Well, that also helps in that emotional part of it.
Feed your soul. Feed your soul. Absolutely. Absolutely. Come on some Designhounds retreats and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really important. It's really important. Cheryl, I know we're running out of time.
Okay.
So what you said your annual coaching, how does your coaching program work?
Yeah, we have the design paradigm. We're going to be launching it again for the annual in August, September timeframe that Stephanie knows about that I don't know about. And that is a year-long program. And it's very interactive, lots of workshops, but a lot of one-on-one time with me also. And I'm limiting to a certain amount of people because I want to be able to really get to know those people. And that's really the best. We have sometimes we offer sections of the design paradigm, but I'm kind of getting away from that a little bit because I really enjoy most myself, again, doing what we just said about looking at what you enjoy the most, getting to know people enough where I can send them a necklace at the end of the year that has a word that belongs to them. That's
it. Yeah, so it's personal and you're showing up and there's not a disconnect. So
I really enjoy that part of it. So that's what I'm not saying we're not going to do something else. We might launch something for newer designers because I think there is a need, like you said, because there's so many people out there going for the low hanging fruit. And I think some of these designers are spending money where they shouldn't. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that at some point for like a smaller type of thing. But right now that's the annual thing is what is worked the best and made the most success in other people's lives. And that's what I don't care about having my name on a fabric. I don't care about having my name on a chair, any of that. Although I have loved the things I've done with Modenas, that's for sure. But for me, it's helping somebody else's small business there's nothing like it for me. It's a drug for me and I really enjoy it. So that's really where I'm doing, but I still have this day job and the retail and the
Gotta do the 9 other things as well. If anybody can do it, it's you. Thank you very much, Cheryl. We're going to drop a lot of links to send us your different program links. We'll put them in the comments below.
Okay.
Thanks everybody for coming. And I am going to see you in Pensacola on Central Time sometime very soon. I can't believe I've still not been to see you.
Yeah, you come see us anytime. Maybe we'll do a retreat. Maybe we'll do a retreat here, Veronika. It's a beautiful place to be. It really is. It's gorgeous here.
I'm gonna call you on that.
Okay, do it.
All right, do it. Let's do it. Blurry. My camera's blurry. It's burned out. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.